In 1945, France was broken. Factories flattened, bridges collapsed, railways twisted into scrap metal. Its currency was fragile, its empire was slipping away, and its political system looked like it might fall apart any minute. Fast forward a few decades, France becomes one of the largest economies on earth, home to some of the most valuable luxury brands in history, a nuclear power, a welfare state so generous it borders on defiant, a country where citizens work fewer hours than most developed nations, yet produce enormous wealth. So, how did a nation that was physically shattered become financially powerful? And more importantly, is that power as solid as it looks? This matters right now because France represents a model many countries quietly envy. High wages, strong worker protections, universal healthcare, powerful unions, and global corporations that dominate culture. If that system works, it rewrites the rules of capitalism. If it doesn't, the cracks are expensive to understand France's wealth. You have to start with a decision. After World War II, France did not choose pure capitalism, and it did not choose socialism either. It chose control. The French state stepped in and did something unusual for a Western democracy. It planned, not in the Soviet sense, but in a structured, deliberate way. The government mapped out priority industries: energy, transport, steel, aviation, and directed capital into them. It nationalized major banks. It took ownership stakes in utilities. It created long-term industrial strategies instead of leaving everything to market chaos. They called it dirigism, guided capitalism. It was calm, technocratic, almost boring, and it worked. From the late 1940s to the mid-1970s. France experienced what it now calls les 30 glorieuses, the 30 glorious years. GDP exploded, productivity soared, millions moved from farms to cities, infrastructure modernized at speed. Here's the simple mechanism: the state absorbed risk. Private companies executed, workers gained stability. When you remove uncertainty from energy, transport, and finance, investment accelerates. When workers feel protected, they spend. When domestic demand rises, industry expands. The French weren't guessing, they were engineering. Then came oil shocks, global competition, inflation. The 1970s ended the golden age, but by then France had built something durable. National champions, companies that could compete globally. In aerospace, France became a pillar of Airbus, challenging American dominance. In energy, it doubled down on nuclear power, making itself one of the least carbon-intensive major economies in the world. In luxury goods, French brands quietly took over the planet. Here's where things get interesting. Luxury is not trivial. It's not handbags and perfume in a vacuum. It's pricing power. French conglomerates sell scarcity, they sell heritage, they sell identity, and they sell it at margins most industries can only dream of. When a company can charge $3,000 for a bag that costs a fraction to produce, it doesn't just make profit. It prints cultural capital, and cultural capital compounds. France turned taste into GDP, but luxury alone doesn't explain everything. Germany exports machines, America exports software, France exports something different: value-added narrative. Meanwhile, the French state never fully retreated, even as privatization waves hit Europe. In the 1980s and 1992, France kept strategic influence in key sectors. The government still owns stakes in major corporations. It still shapes industrial policy. It still treats certain industries as too important to fail. This creates stability. It also creates tension, because the French social model is expensive: universal healthcare, generous pensions, long-paid vacations, public sector employment that remains significant. These benefits don't fund themselves. France's tax-to-GDP ratio is among the highest in the developed world. High earners pay heavily. Corporations face layered taxation. Consumption taxes are substantial. Here's the uncomfortable math: for the system to function, productivity must stay high. Exports must remain competitive. Debt must stay manageable. France has walked this line carefully. It joined the euro, surrendering control over its currency in exchange for stability and integration. That decision limited its ability to devalue during crises. But it also anchored inflation and reduced borrowing costs. Cheap borrowing matters. France runs persistent deficits. It spends more than it collects. The gap is covered by debt. As long as investors believe the French economy is strong and the European system is stable, borrowing remains affordable. Confidence becomes an economic asset. Then there's geography. France sits at the crossroads of Western Europe, massive ports, high-speed rail connecting major cities, access to the European single market of hundreds of millions of consumers. For French companies, the domestic market is only the starting line, and let's not ignore agriculture. France is one of Europe's largest agricultural producers. Wine, dairy, grain. These aren't just rural traditions. They are export engines supported by European subsidies and global demand. The countryside feeds the cities and the trade balance. But wealth isn't just about output, it's about structure. France built a layered economy at the top, global champions in luxury, aerospace, energy, and finance in the middle. A dense network of mid-sized firms, often family-owned, integrated into European supply chains at the base. A large public sector that cushions downturns and stabilizes consumption. It's a three-tiered system. When one layer weakens, another absorbs shock. That cushioning showed up during crises. During the 2008 financial meltdown, France didn't collapse like some of its neighbors. Its banks were exposed, yes, but the state intervened quickly. Social safety nets prevented demand from imploding. The economy slowed, but it did not unravel. During the pandemic, government spending surged again, wage subsidies, business support, massive borrowing. The philosophy remained consistent. Preserve the system first, calculate later. It sounds reckless, it isn't entirely. If preventing mass unemployment avoids long-term scarring, the debt may be worth it, but that depends on future growth. And here's where the tension grows. France's unemployment rate has historically been higher than some peers. Youth unemployment has been stubborn. Labor laws are protective, sometimes rigid. Strikes are not rare. Reform attempts often trigger protests. There's irony here. The very protections that create stability can slow adaptation. Global competition does not pause for social dialogue. Technology does not negotiate with unions. France has tried to modernize without dismantling its model, adjusting labor codes. Encouraging startups, investing in tech clusters, supporting innovation in artificial intelligence, green energy, and biotech. It wants to prove something subtle, that a high-tax, high-benefit society can still be globally competitive. And in many ways it is. France consistently ranks among the world's largest economies. It attracts foreign investment. Paris remains a financial and cultural hub. Its companies acquire rivals rather than being acquired. But there's a quiet risk embedded in the numbers. Public debt has grown significantly over decades. Demographics are shifting. An aging population means more pension payouts and healthcare costs. Fewer workers must support more retirees. The math tightens, growth must accelerate, productivity must rise, or taxes must increase further, or benefits must adjust. None of those choices are painless. And yet, France has one more advantage that's harder to quantify. Brand. The French state understands soft power. Fashion weeks, cinema, cuisine, tourism, millions visit every year. That inflow supports jobs, services, and global perception. Perception feeds investment. Investment feeds growth. Wealth, in France's case, is partially psychological. People trust French goods. They trust French engineering. They trust French wine without needing a spreadsheet to justify it. Trust lowers friction. Lower friction increases margins. But trust can erode if debt rises too far. If growth stalls, if political polarization intensifies, if global trade fragments, France's wealth is not accidental. It is the result of deliberate state planning layered with private ambition. It is capitalism guided by bureaucracy, markets disciplined by policy, risk absorbed by government balance sheets. It is neither laissez-faire nor centrally planned. It is French. The question now is not how France got rich. That part is clear. The question is whether the model can survive the next 30 years. Can a high spending welfare state remain competitive in a world of automation and geopolitical tension? Can cultural prestige continue to generate economic advantage? Can debt remain manageable if growth slows? France has proven skeptics wrong before. After war, after oil shocks, after financial crises. But every system works until it doesn't. And the real test of wealth isn't how you build it, it's whether you can afford to keep it.